In the last 24 hours, a sealed royal decree emerged strange, sudden, and unmistakable. Camilla's family name is gone. The corridors of power stirred with whispers, and the public barely had time to blink before the news spread like wildfire. For years, Camilla's integration into the monarchy had been carefully managed, delicately worded, and measured with every official press release. But now, that subtle balance appears to have shattered in a flash. Gone is the mention of her family line Parker Bowles, absent from a decree that was meant to solidify and affirm her position within the royal framework. What was once a name tightly tied to her identity, and by extension the legacy she brought into the firm, has been wiped clean without warning. The timing is peculiar. Sources close to the palace say the decree was signed within the past few days, its language stripped of any mention of Camilla's heritage, raising a storm of speculation and unease. But what truly caught the world off guard wasn't just the omission, but who reportedly signed it. Allegedly, the signatures etched onto the parchment include not only King Charles himself, but also Princess Anne, his most trusted sibling, and the monarchy's steely traditionalist. This adds a layer of mystery and possible tension within the royal household. Why would Charles, a man known for his fierce loyalty to Camilla, and the years he spent fighting for her public acceptance, allow her name to be discarded so unceremoniously? Or was this decision, perhaps, not entirely his own? The silence from Buckingham Palace has only poured fuel onto the fire. No official response, no clarification, no damage control, just a cold, quiet void where answers should have been. And while the press scrambles for statements and explanations, the online world has lit up with its own brand of chaos. 1-minute AGO headlines flooded social platforms, spinning the story into a frenzy of theories, accusations, and imagined betrayals. In a monarchy where perception is power, such headlines wield incredible influence, no matter how exaggerated. This isn't just about a name being dropped from a document. This is about control, about the message, about dominance over legacy and narrative. It suggests a deliberate move to reshape Camilla's place in the story of the modern royal family, erasing the reminders of a past that many, even now, still whisper about behind palace doors. Some believe it's an aggressive bid to streamline the monarchy's image, cutting off old limbs to allow new ones to grow. Others see something darker, a rising schism within the royal inner circle, where quiet power struggles unfold in cryptic decisions and ceremonial gestures. And so, we are left with a question far bigger than what the decree omitted. What was the motive? Was this an act of image control, carefully timed for strategic refinement, or does it reflect an intensifying rift behind palace walls, where loyalty to bloodline clashes with personal allegiance? The answer, as always, may lie not in what's said, but in what's left unsaid. To understand this shock move, we must look back into centuries of tradition, titles, and royal symbolism. Camilla's path to the throne wasn't smooth. Her past still haunts every royal move. For decades, she was cast as the outsider, the woman who dared to stand in the shadows of Princess Diana. Her name evoked discomfort, scandal, and whispers in Buckingham's grand halls. When Charles married Camilla in 2005, it wasn't just a union of love, it was a declaration of war against public perception. Many saw her as the reason behind Diana's heartache, and the nation, still mourning its people's princess, wasn't ready to embrace her replacement. But Charles was unwavering. Against the tides of hostility, he stood by Camilla, patiently, relentlessly, slowly reshaping her image brick by brick. And while she quietly worked behind the scenes, patronages, low-profile events, and silent loyalty, the monarchy began preparing for a future few dared to speak aloud. Then came 2022, and the Queen's Platinum Jubilee. The world watched as Queen Elizabeth II, with the weight of a nation in her words, broke tradition. Her official statement, subtle but seismic, expressed her sincere wish that Camilla would be known as Queen Consort when the time came. It was more than a royal blessing. It was an institutional reset, a command to the country to accept what many still refuse to acknowledge. Camilla was no longer in the shadows. The term Queen Consort was carefully chosen, strategic, deliberate, a half-step that both honored Elizabeth's legacy and cushioned public resistance. The title separated Camilla from the sovereign authority of the monarch while acknowledging her rightful place by Charles's side. But even this careful balance wasn't enough to hold. In the months leading up to the coronation, the language surrounding Camilla began to shift once more. The word consort began vanishing first from press materials, then from official invitations. It wasn't an accident. The invitations to the historic coronation of King Charles III referred to her simply as Queen Camilla, a quiet but clear break from the Queen's earlier wording. This was no minor editorial change. It was a tectonic shift in royal branding, a signal to the world that the monarchy was moving on its own terms, not just preserving legacy but evolving beyond it. The traditionalists winced. The progressives nodded. But the palace remained silent, letting the world adjust without explanation. And in silence, power often moves the fastest. Soon after, the royal warrant itself was amended. Church services and royal prayers steeped in centuries of tradition no longer referred to Queen Consort. She was now Her Majesty the Queen. The final veil had dropped. This change wasn't ceremonial, it was constitutional. It placed Camilla in a role where history would no longer make distinctions. She wasn't just the king's wife, she was the queen. The shift went beyond semantics. It marked the end of a long rehabilitation campaign. What began as quiet appearances and whispered endorsements had blossomed into a full coronation, a public renaming, and a reclamation of royal space. And while many still remember the controversy of her early days, the tides of opinion have undeniably shifted. Camilla has found a place in the public eye through meaningful advocacy, championing causes like literacy, osteoporosis, awareness, and domestic violence prevention. With every step forward, she has chipped away at her past. Her approval ratings, once in the gutter, now rise steadily, buoyed by consistency, restraint, and quiet service. Yet despite all the strides, the ghost of Diana still lingers. That comparison will never fully fade, and perhaps Camilla knows that better than anyone, which is why every move now is not just about role, it's about redefining legacy. This wasn't just a title tweak, it was a deliberate reinvention. Dropping a surname might seem trivial, but in monarchy, it speaks volumes. The erasure of Camilla's family name Parker Bowles from a royal decree wasn't a clerical simplification. It was a calculated omission, loaded with centuries of meaning and centuries of precedent. In the world of royalty, names are more than identifiers, they are symbols. And symbols, in the House of Windsor, carry the weight of loyalty, legacy, and perception. By stripping away her non-royal surname, the palace didn't just remove a name, they redrew the boundaries of identity, tightening the monarchy's grip on its carefully curated narrative. Camilla, long caught between titles, roles, and historical shadows, now stands under a single moniker, Queen. The move sends a message as cold as it is clear there is no room for half measures anymore. You are either royalty in name and presence, or you are not. For Camilla, this shift marks the final cut from her previous life. Her married identity has now been fully eclipsed by the crown. Queen Camilla is no longer the wife of a monarch. She is a monarch's mirror, shaped entirely by institution, tradition, and royal will. The name Parker Bowles was never officially used in state matters, but its absence from this decree now confirms what had long been implied in her life before Charles had no bearing on the future of the crown. It's a ruthless kind of ascension, one that buries the past in order to strengthen the throne. But beneath the surface lies a quiet discomfort. Was this a personal decision by Charles, to spare her the lingering whispers of past scandals? Or was it a broader move by the institution to distance itself from any associations that could fracture the public's fragile acceptance? What's more telling is how this plays in the modern media age. In a world where headlines are scanned in seconds and images last longer than explanations, clarity is king. Having multiple names, titles, or qualifiers only muddies the monarchy's image, and confusion is the enemy of control. Queen Camilla is sharp, simple, and final. It's a rebrand disguised as tradition, a tactic used not only to eliminate ambiguity, but to erase association with any identity that doesn't serve the crown. And she is not the first. Previous royal wives, including Queen Mary and Queen Elizabeth, the Queen Mother, never used surnames in formal settings. Their identities were absorbed entirely into the institution, so Camilla's case, while controversial, is far from unprecedented. This omission isn't rewriting the rulebook, it's enforcing it with more force than before. But there's another layer to this, a message about where the monarchy is headed. It's not just pruning names, it's pruning lineage. It's streamlining itself for the digital age, where image is everything, and every title must serve the narrative of strength, unity, and forward momentum. dropping Camilla's family name isn't a slight. It's a cold, deliberate play in the larger game of monarchical survival. It signals the shift toward a monarchy that speaks with fewer words but greater weight. And in doing so, it's writing a new kind of history, one that values clarity over sentiment, branding over bloodlines, and legacy over biography. But titles are only as powerful as the laws behind them. A seemingly minute wording change in church prayers? That's the kingdom speaking. When the royal warrant was revised on May 6, 2023, the very day King Charles and Camilla were crowned, it wasn't just a matter of protocol. It was a declaration. In the hallowed institutions of the British monarchy, language is law, and law is legacy. And when the monarchy decides to alter the very words spoken during sacred services across the United Kingdom, it's not merely symbolic, it's seismic. The decree was subtle in its delivery, but precise in its impact. Where once the Book of Common Prayer included Queen Consort, it now speaks plainly, Her Majesty, the Queen. The omission of the family name was already a bold erasure. This, however, went a step further. It wasn't just about documents. It was about faith, tradition, and authority aligning with a new royal message. The royal warrant, a rarely invoked but powerful tool of the crown, holds sway over every corner of royal representation, from currency to coats of arms, from church services to court titles. It is not a suggestion. It is an order. And this order, released quietly yet forcefully, mandated that all forms of communication, prayer, and ceremonial address reflect the new title, removing not only Parker Bowles, but the very distinction of consort. There was no room left for hesitation. This was the final stamp of institutional acceptance. It was the monarchy telling the world, this is no longer a transition, it is the reality. The scope of this decision reached far beyond the pews of Westminster. Churches across the Commonwealth were now required to pray in the Queen's name, no longer as the King's companion, but as a sovereign figure of her own. Every state document, every military blessing, every legal reference was updated in quiet lockstep. And unlike previous shifts, there was no public discussion, no press conference, no justification offered. The change simply took effect cleanly, swiftly, and irreversibly. That silence? It wasn't avoidance, it was dominance. A monarch doesn't explain his decrees. Historically, such liturgical modifications have been reserved for monumental changes. A monarch's death, a succession, a declaration of war. The decision to redefine Camilla's royal address through such a sacred channel places her elevation in that same league. There are precedents, yes, but they are few and far between. Even Queen Elizabeth, the Queen Mother, retained a unique styling despite her son's reign. But this time, no ambiguity was permitted, no dual titles, no diluted identities. Camilla's transformation was not to be gradual, it was to be absolute. The legal ramifications of this change ripple beneath the surface. They reinforce the fusion of monarchy and church, of royal title and spiritual legitimacy. For a kingdom built on centuries of divine right and ceremonial sanctity, this change reaffirms the monarchy's influence in both state and soul. And in aligning the church's language with the monarchy's brand, Charles has done more than honor his wife. He's cemented her place in history through the oldest institution under the crown's command. This wasn't a moment of religious reform. It was branding by decree, etched into the very prayers of the nation. A line has been drawn quietly, firmly, and with unmistakable finality. Camilla is queen, not in waiting or in courtesy, but in title, in law, and in liturgy. No surname, no asterisk, just the name that now echoes in every cathedral and chapel across the land. But the decree's ripples go far beyond the chapel aisles. Did this decree come from Charles, or was it whispered from deeper within? That question now sits like a splinter beneath the surface of the monarchy. For all the formality that surrounds a royal decree, its origins have become the epicenter of speculation. On the face of it, the document bears the sovereign's authority. But eagle-eyed royal watchers noticed some curious reports suggesting that not only did King Charles sign off on the removal of Camilla's family name, but that Princess Anne's signature also appeared on the decree. This was no ceremonial gesture. If true, it would mean that Anne, long seen as the monarchy's iron pillar of tradition, may have had a direct hand in distancing the crown from Camilla's lineage. That detail, subtle as it may be, ignited whispers that the decision was not as unified as it seemed. Was this a united front, or a quiet compromise? Theories began to surge. Some claimed the move was a strategic attempt by Princess Anne or even William's advisors to reinforce royal purity and suppress lingering controversy. Others went further, painting a picture of factional battles within the palace walls. On one side, those loyal to Camilla, determined to secure her full status and erase any traces of scandal. On the other, the old guard, those who still wince at the mention of Diana, at the memory of public fury, at the idea that Camilla could ever fully claim the crown's grace. It's a narrative as old as monarchy itself. Power struggles hidden beneath the thinnest layer of civility. And when the stakes are this high, even silence can feel like a scream. Social media, of course, wasted no time. Viral videos began to flood timelines, some claiming Camilla had been snubbed, others going as far as suggesting she had been stripped of her title. Grainy thumbnails, clickbait captions, and emotional monologues swirled through feeds, amplifying the mystery tenfold. No official proof, no concrete documents shared, just headlines flashing, 1 minute ago, fueled by adrenaline and the public's thirst for royal chaos. Yet the silence from Buckingham Palace only made it worse. There was no clarification, no formal rebuttal, no attempt to control the storm. And in the world of royalty, when the palace refuses to speak, the void gets filled with wild speculation. Among insiders, the mood is tense. Some view the move as a quiet acknowledgement of internal dissent and an effort to pacify opposing camps while still projecting strength. Others insist it was a calculated and unanimous choice. But even in whispered circles, the tone is uneasy. Camilla's allies within the palace may now find themselves walking a tighter line, while those aligned with Anne or William might feel emboldened. The tension isn't about the title anymore. It's about who truly holds sway behind the throne. Because in the monarchy, influence isn't always worn like a crown, it's wielded like a shadow. What comes next may very well reshape the institution's inner power balance. This decree, though cloaked in formality, may have exposed fractures that could deepen. If Camilla's name can be erased so swiftly, what else can be revised? And more importantly, who decides? As factions subtly assert themselves, and loyalties continue to shift, one thing is certain: the monarchy is not the monolith it once appeared to be. While gossip swirls, the public reaction tells its own story. As palace doors whisper, public forums shout what people really feel matters. And when the monarchy makes a move as controversial as erasing a queen's family name, the reaction doesn't stay within the walls of Windsor. It spills out, flooding the press, dominating broadcasts, and igniting millions of conversations across kitchen tables and digital timelines. In the UK, commentary split sharply. For some, the move to remove Parker Bowles was a necessary evolutionary part of a broader campaign to protect and modernize the royal image. To others, it was a deliberate rewriting of history, a whitewashing of a scandal-scarred past. But what stood out most wasn't the headlines, it was the emotion they triggered. Because this wasn't just about a title, it was about trust, legacy, and the wounds of betrayal that the public never quite allowed to heal. Sensational videos quickly capitalized on the frenzy. YouTube exploded with thumbnails screaming, "Camilla kicked out of the royal decree," even though no such action had officially taken place. The thumbnails were dramatic, the claims unverified, but the clicks kept coming. Comment sections turned into war zones, with supporters fiercely defending the Queen's place in the monarchy, while critics resurrected old grudges: Diana's heartbreak, Charles's affair, and the long shadow of the past. What mattered wasn't what was true, it was what felt true. And in that realm, perception reigns supreme. Polls have long tracked Camilla's approval ratings, and her journey has been nothing short of a climb through fire. In the early 2000s, public opinion was brutal. Barely a quarter of the country supported her. The wounds of Diana's death were too fresh, the affair too raw. But over time, through careful public appearances, a non-confrontational image, and relentless behind-the-scenes work, Camilla began to win over the skeptics. By the time of the coronation, approval had climbed to over 50%, a remarkable turnaround given where she began. But even then, that support was conditional, soft, tentative, and easily shaken by reminders of her past. And this is where the tabloid press holds a dangerous sway. When a story breaks, it's not the facts that lead, it's the framing. Snubbed, silenced, shamed headlines don't ask for patience, they demand outrage. And when readers are already split, the media doesn't just report the story, it becomes the story. In this case, the framing didn't just paint a picture of a name change, It hinted at exile, at disgrace, at a quiet rebellion within the crown itself. Suddenly, a strategic omission in a decree became, in the public eye, a royal purge. Social media only amplified the divide. Anti-monarchists saw the change as proof that the system was collapsing under its own contradictions. Pro-monarchy voices pushed back, arguing that the shift was smart, even overdue, that Camilla had earned her place through grace under pressure. But the gap between those who believe in the monarchy and those who see it as a relic is widening, and that divide, now echoed in every viral tweet and furious comment thread, exposes how fragile the institution's standing has become. Surveys reveal a complex picture. A significant portion of Britons admit they don't fully understand the specifics of royal titles, yet they form strong opinions based on how things are presented. That disconnect between institutional decisions and public comprehension creates a vacuum, one the media fills with controversy and the public fills with emotion. And therein lies the monarchy's greatest challenge, not managing titles, but managing trust. This cultural moment now requires reflection on broader royal strategy. From titles to tweets, Buckingham wants a leaner, tighter monarchy. This isn't just a name change, it's a signal fire. King Charles has long envisioned a monarchy stripped of excess, streamlined for the modern age, and fiercely controlled in its message. The removal of Camilla's family name, followed by the decisive adoption of Queen Camilla across all official platforms, is just one thread in a far larger tapestry. The monarchy is undergoing a quiet rebranding, one that doesn't ask for approval, but insists on adaptation. Charles isn't merely reigning, he's redesigning. And in his design, clarity trumps tradition, simplicity overrides sentiment, and legacy is sculpted with precision, not nostalgia. At the heart of this rebrand is a fundamental truth. In a world ruled by rapid headlines and algorithm-driven visibility, the monarchy can't afford to be complicated. Queen Consort Camilla Parker Bowles is a mouthful. Queen Camilla is a statement. This reduction in form is an increase in impact. Titles are now crafted to resonate in sound bites, to fit into headlines, to remain unchallenged across social media feeds. The goal isn't just to respect its recognition. And recognition, in the age of distraction, is everything. Charles's decision to condense Camilla's identity into a singular, sovereign-facing role wasn't just strategic. It was essential to protect the crown from drowning in its own historical weight. Compare this to the branding of William and Catherine, the Prince and Princess of Wales. Their titles are clean, sharp, and unified. There's no hyphen, no past affiliation, no inherited baggage. Every public appearance, every press release, every social engagement reinforces that image. And now, Camilla's presentation follows suit. The palace is removing the noise, stripping away surnames, multiple titles, ceremonial add-ons that once cluttered the royal narrative. In this new age, the institution must be both timeless and clickable. This is monarchy meets marketing, and it's being executed with military precision. The impact goes beyond how names appear in newspapers. This clarity extends to ceremonies, invitations, and state protocols. At the coronation, the wording on formal invitations referred to her simply as the Queen. The royal family's website echoed the same. Across global press agencies, official documentation, and televised coverage, there was no hesitation, no caveat, no footnote, just one title. And with that, every ritual that once gave room to ambiguity now echoes with uniformity. The Queen, period. That isn't a mistake, it's a campaign. And every detail, from liturgical revisions to the cut of a name, is designed to align behind one unshakable image. But not everyone is aligned. Traditionalists bristle at what they see as a sanitization of heritage. They argue that in simplifying roles, the crown risks severing ties with the very complexity that gives it historical depth. Camilla's past, her full name, her complicated entry into royal life, some say these shouldn't be erased, but acknowledged. Yet modernists argue the opposite, that in order for the monarchy to survive, it must let go of outdated intricacies that no longer serve its core function. Stability, symbolism, and storytelling. In that sense, Camilla's transformation isn't an exception. It's a prototype. What we're witnessing isn't just a stylistic adjustment, it's a full-blown institutional reorientation. The monarchy is shedding the weight of inherited confusion and embracing something stark, manageable, and broadcast-ready. And that means every name, every title, every public-facing word must serve the mission of continuity wrapped in clarity. Yet every powerful narrative shift needs grounding for the institution's survival. She's no figurehead. Camilla has quietly begun steering palace moves too. For years, she played the role of the silent supporter, the woman who stood just behind the king, smiling softly, never challenging, never commanding. But that image, carefully cultivated and cautiously projected, now feels outdated. Because behind the scenes, Camilla has become something far more strategic, a force, not loud, not defiant but deliberate. And if recent events have proven anything, it's that her influence is no longer confined to the margins. The streamlined title, the ceremonial shifts, the royal messaging all bear her fingerprints. This isn't a queen in name only. This is a woman reshaping her destiny from within the heart of the crown. Her hand in ceremonial planning has been deeper than most imagined. From the design of the coronation robes to the inclusion of her closest allies among the queen's companions, a departure from the old ladies-in-waiting structure, Camilla has ushered in change with precision. She has carefully redefined the look and language of her role, aligning it with the modern, more efficient monarchy Charles champions. These weren't surface-level adjustments. They were symbols of transition, and they show that Camilla isn't simply adapting to royal life. She's curating it. Her role in ceremonial planning is strategic, not just in optics, but in purpose. She's embedding herself into the fabric of royal life, in ways that guarantee permanence. Her patronages have surged under this rain-like momentum. Literacy campaigns, women's rights, osteoporosis research, and all long-time causes of Camilla's have taken on renewed visibility. These aren't accidental expansions. They are carefully calculated moves that extend her relevance beyond royal protocol into public advocacy. And with the streamlined title now fully in place, the results are tangible. Institutions that once held her at arm's length now welcome her with royal prestige. She no longer needs to be introduced as Charles's wife. She enters a room as queen, full stop. And in a monarchy built on symbols, that kind of presence opens doors once closed. Even her public appearances have shifted in tone. Her presence at Ascot wasn't just social, it was strategic. Her involvement in Commonwealth events? Measured, but meaningful. And when she spoke on mental health or visited survivors of domestic violence, she wasn't just showing support, she was cementing her place in the soft power structure of the crown. Camilla isn't a headline chaser, but she knows how headlines work. She doesn't shout, she shows up. And in doing so, she's begun to reframe her narrative, not as the woman who came second, but as the queen who arrived when the world wasn't watching. The genius lies in the subtlety. Aligning her title wasn't just about cleaning up royal branding. It was about eliminating doubt about who she is, what she represents, and what power she holds. That clarity amplifies her impact. Every initiative she leads now carries the full weight of her office. Every charity visit, every speech, every endorsement feels institutional. And when combined with Charles's push for a modern, minimalistic monarchy, the message is unmistakable. They're not just ruling together, they're communicating in sync. This synergy between Charles and Camilla is no accident. It's the product of years of rebuilding, of redefining their story not as a scandal, but as a redemption arc. Their unified front sends a powerful message. The past is settled. The future is co-authored. They speak in harmony now, each public appearance, each title change, each policy tweak, reinforcing the other's position. And that kind of unity, especially within a family as fractured as the Windsors, is a rare and formidable thing. All leading to one last question. What does this signal for the future of the crown? One word may have changed the monarchy's story now. What comes next? With the quiet removal of Parker Bowles and the forceful rise of Queen Camilla, the royal family has drawn a new line in the sand. The question no longer circles around whether Camilla belongs. It now orbits what her streamlined identity means for every future consort who follows. Will Catherine, now Princess of Wales, eventually ascend without the baggage of appended titles, without the softeners like consort or duchess, and simply be crowned Queen Catherine? If Charles's rebranding of Camilla is any indication, the answer is yes. Simplicity is no longer a byproduct, it's the blueprint. This single stylistic change has set a precedent, one that favors clarity over tradition, optics over lineage, and brand over blood. And yet, as modern as this move may seem, it teeters dangerously between innovation and disruption. Younger generations, especially Gen Z, aren't tethered to royal traditions. They crave transparency, authenticity, and above all, relevance. To them, royal titles mean little unless they carry purpose. A queen who advocates for literacy and domestic violence awareness will resonate far more than one draped in silk and silence. By simplifying Camilla's identity, the palace may be attempting to resonate with a faster, louder world. But it risks leaving behind the very rituals that once gave the crown its mystique. The monarchy is dancing on a tightrope, trying to remain timeless while speaking the language of now. That balance is already beginning to crack in places. Traditionalists argue that erasing historical identifiers chips away at the sacred structure of monarchy itself. Titles weren't just for pomp, they were symbolic anchors, each one tied to centuries of precedent and power. What happens when those anchors are cut loose? What fills the void? There's a quiet fear that by streamlining too far, the monarchy could lose the very depth that justifies its existence. Because when every title is polished into simplicity, complexity fades, and with it, perhaps, the magic. And what of legality? The no-name decree may feel cosmetic, but its implications stretch deeper. If Parker Bowles can vanish from official liturgy, could future challenges arise over legitimacy, protocol, or even succession? Could someone use the absence of a name to argue a breach of constitutional norms? These questions may sound far-fetched now, but history has shown that royal disputes rarely start with thunder. They begin with whispers, and this whisper just became deafening. Ultimately, what this moment reveals is a monarchy in flux, not collapsing, but mutating. It may be a sign of steady evolution, a necessary shift to preserve the institution in a world that changes by the minute. Or it may be a warning, a quiet rupture that signals deeper fractures within the system. Camilla's title wasn't just changed, it was recorded. What once was a royal woman with a complicated past is now a queen with no qualifiers. And that change, small in word, vast in weight, will echo into every corridor of the crown's future. The monarchy stands at a crossroads, and that tiny decree may have nudged it forward. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in the next one.